Well, welcome once again to this series called Practice Makes Progress.
That's right. Progress.
We are at video 9. We've covered a few different practices that we want to add into our lives that really help us grow spiritually. Mm-hmm. It can be very transformational, and even places of character and maturity can really be a lot of parts of growth in this. Mm-hmm. So we're on video 9, and we're just going to dive in because today we're going to cover the spiritual practices of community, fellowship, and celebration.
So we're starting off with the word fellowship. That's not a word we often use in our culture today. So, in churches we use it quite a bit, but I think maybe too much sometimes.
Yep.
What's the context? What does fellowship really mean?
Well, I mean, really, at the end of the day, what it means is it's about connection.
Yeah.
Probably if we've heard the word fellowship the most, I mean, at least my experience, and definitely one of the more famous ones that I'm aware of, especially in pop culture, is when it comes to Lord of the Rings in the first book or movie, whatever. If you're like both,
Fellowship of the Ring. Yes.
Fellowship of the Ring. And really in the story, it's the ring, it's the journey, it's the mission to destroy that ring that brings a diverse group together.
Sure.
And they call it Fellowship of the Ring. So very much in the same for us, fellowship is a glue that brings us together and keeps us together.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the practice of fellowship, it's really acknowledging that glue. And for us as followers of Jesus, it is Jesus.
Yes,
that's right.
Sunday school answer. Pretty easy.
And so just like going to Ephesians, which is so much really about community and fellowship in a lot of ways. Ephesians 2, just verse 14 says, for Christ himself has brought peace to us. He united Jews and Gentiles into one people when, in his own body on the cross, he broke down the wall of hostility that separated us. He did this by ending the system of law with its commandments and regulations. He made peace between Jews and Gentiles by creating in himself one new people from two groups. Together as one body, Christ reconciled both groups to God by means of his death on the cross, and our hostility towards each other was put to death. He brought this good news of peace to you, Gentiles, who are far away from him, and the peace to the Jews who are near. Now all of us can come to the Father through the same Holy Spirit because of what Christ has done for us.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's really emphasizes the point we just made. So before we move on to community and celebration, I think it's really important that we recognize this whole idea and the practice of following Jesus is really not something you do by yourself. It's not a solo endeavor.
No, it's really not. And Trish Harrison Warren, in her book, The Liturgy of Ordinary, writes that while an individual relationship with Jesus is an important part of the Christian life, it's not the sum total of the Christian life. And she goes on to say that many within church history would confess that it is possible to have It's impossible to have a relationship with Christ outside of the vital relationship with a Jesus following community, or another way we say that is the church.
Sure. And there are lots of spiritual practices that we've already talked about, like praying and reading the Bible, and those can be done individually, and we would always encourage followers of Jesus to do that individually. Yeah. However, those things still can be done using the idea of fellowship as a communal thing as well.
Yeah, and actually probably do those things as much as we encourage the individual. It's equally vital that we do it in community as well.
Which is a good lead into the word community.
Yeah. So community, we kind of see definitely ideas of it throughout Scripture. I mean, you can go back to one of the first things that Jesus really does when it comes to, moving into ministry is he creates a community. We can look at those 12 disciples, and that's just more of the major focus that we see in the Gospels, of that there was still a community of those who were also not just the 12 that would follow him around as well.
Lots and lots all the time.
But there's just a few little notions that really speak to community. One is Acts 2:42, and so this is after Peter has given an inspiring message, and he says, all believers devoted themselves to the apostle teachings and to fellowship and to sharing meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. They did that together. Hebrews 10:23-25 says, let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we without wavering to the hope we affirm. For God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near.
Now, some people try and use that verse to say that we should always meet on Sundays.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I feel like, though you could say that encompasses that, it's really not.
It's speaking to much broader.
It's so much broader than that.
Yeah.
It really is. And then just Galatians 6:2, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. And so all of that really speaks to about community.
Yep.
You know, it is about making sure we don't forsake or somehow leave the idea of being a part of a community and meeting together, whatever that might look like.
Yep.
And there's just such ways to do things together, things like meals together, as well as really importantly is just to share one another burdens.
And how would that? How would we phrase that in today's
mutual support?
Mutual support. I like that.
I think one of the most important things when it comes to community is to, and this is coming down to the mutual support idea, is to be present, not merely in attendance. And so this is where we can go back to that Hebrews thing where it's just like, just go to church. Well, it's more than that, because you can go to church and just be in attendance.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the things that Courtney loves about me so much, is my ability to be in attendance but not present. What I mean by that is she can talk to me about things. I can even respond in fairly coherent sentences. But I am definitely not part of the conversation, because she'll say, hey, remember we talked about? I'm like, no, I don't think I was there. So in those moments, I find that I am in attendance, but I am not present. So the spiritual practice of community is really about being present with each other.
That's really important. Yeah.
It's about giving accountability to each other when needed. It's sharing struggles with each other. It's sharing hopes with each other. It's providing mutual encouragement. We celebrate each other in the midst of the good things that happen, and we mourn with each other in the midst of the hard times. We bear burdens.
Yeah, our group actually met last night, and it's a group we've been meeting for more than a couple of years now. And so we know each other fairly well. And this has been a hard summer for our group. There's been lots of home repairs, some expensive repairs, some family members who've been sick, and it's been fairly taxing on the individuals, and we were just sharing last night. We were sort of one of the highlights of the summer, and there was good times and there was bad times, and it felt one of the things that came out of that conversation was how much support we actually got from our group, and I thought that was really speaks to the point we're making here.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note it doesn't mean that the whatever one's going through all of a sudden is better.
No.
Or it might be better, but it isn't all of a sudden just good and the problem solved.
It doesn't fix the problem.
No, but sometimes it makes it a lot more bearable.
Yeah, that's very true.
Just even the act of, one of the important acts of being present is to listen. Even sometimes just the ability to know that someone has just listened to what they say. They might offer great advice. They might have none. They might just nothing that they can do. Like I know sometimes when you say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And the answer quite often is, I don't know, or nothing.
Yeah, or nothing, yeah.
But sometimes just the fact that person is there listening is an immense amount of help.
Yeah. And for our group in particular, we're comfortable with each other enough now to ask people to pray for us.
Yeah.
And so we've prayed together as a group, and we have a little feed going back and forth where we actually can say, okay, I'm praying for you today. I know this is hard for you, so just remember that we're thinking about you and praying for you today.
Yeah. So in the spiritual practice of community, and I think this is really important, because I think with the idea of church, I don't mean the church service, just so we're clarifying. The idea of church service is, I think we can think we're a part of the community because we made an appearance at a gathering. And you can make an appearance at the gathering and not be in community. And because it really is about being present and even investing oneself into it.
Into the community, yeah.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of, and I've done this myself before in different church communities. I remember when I first moved here, I wasn't in ministry at the time, and we had come from a difficult situation, and we moved halfway across the country, and we just wanted to attend a church and not be present.
Yeah, and that's normal. And I mean, I think sometimes when we might be going through it, that might be okay for a season, because there's some healing that might be done. It's also because it's understandable because some of our deepest, Trish Harrison Warren talks about this, some of our deepest wounds come from relationships. But it's also important to remember that, and she goes to add this, but so does some of our deepest healings.
And I would attest to that in my particular case. We did attend the church we were going to for a little bit without becoming involved or making any friends. But I think the healing happened for us once we did start getting involved and made some close friends here, and that helped us immensely through that process.
And I think with the idea of community, especially if you're that we are encouraging this spiritual practice, being in community. I think one of the things I would say is that, there's two ways you can enter a cold lake. You can jump off the pier and dive in, or you can slowly
walk in,
acclimatize. It's okay if you've been hurt or there's some trust and all that needs to be built. That you can take your time walking. Don't hear us say like, just jump in, just go for it. You might need to take some time just to go in a little toe at a time and stuff like that. But we do encourage you, if you got to go slow, but go. Take some time. Let people be in your life and earn the trust. That's okay to do that. We're really hoping if we can practice community well, and we'll be present with one another, I believe that we become more likely to become agents of relational healings and less likely to be the ones inflicting deep relational wounds.
I agree with
that. And I think being present, it will play a big part in that.
Another part of being part of a community is that we can share wisdom and learning. We can learn from each other. I mean, a community is going to have people from different backgrounds and different life experiences, and this leads to different perspectives.
Yeah. We all can we're all practicing different spiritual rhythms. One of the things is, we read the Bible together, and sometimes I'm amazed at when someone shares an insight, and having, read the Bible quite a bit and studied it and all that, and they'll share an insight.
Which is our job. We can still learn from people.
It's amazing. Like they will pick up on something, and you're just like, I've read this 20 times, and I missed that. I didn't see that unique standpoint or that angle, and it can be just something. You go back and you can't not see it now because it's like, how did you mean that? And that could be such a great moment. It's great for growth experience. I mean, because it can revolve around maturity and character. One of the things we've talked about over the last year is just how much maturity and character growth is a result of community. Absolutely, and very much the demonstration of how one responds in a given situation. So that's a huge part about that too. It's also
our series on that, thriving in community. If you want to go back and listen to some of that,
give you a little bit more of we're not going to get into. We can get very detailed on that. Go back and look at that for the more of the detail. Community is also just so important for nurturing spiritual development. When we engage in spiritual practices, so some of the stuff we're talking about now. So obviously this one, community doesn't work without other people, but there's other ones there that we can do very easily without a lot of people. But when we engage in any of those practices collectively, we can really do a lot to enhance our depth in our faith. And you know what? How is this lived out? It's really easy. We're probably doing it. It's just making sure we are intentionally doing it. You can have meals with people. You can go for coffee. Have fun events.
Game nights. I like game nights.
Go for a walk with someone.
It could be anything you do together.
That's really it. It's just two things together. And yes, even a church service can count. However, what we're saying is it shouldn't be the only thing.
I think it's important to let yourself be known and have other friends who are followers of Jesus.
Absolutely. And that leads us into celebration. And celebration is very much attached to joy. It's rooted in gratitude. And we just covered actually that maybe a video or two ago.
Yep.
So we're not going to get into any of that. We'll just, if you haven't watched it or you just want to be encouraged about what joy and gratitude practices are, go back and watch that video and more on that. We're just going to focus on the idea of the celebration aspect of that. Richard Foster frames celebration as a response to joy. But he adds the idea it's a practice that could both deepen one's relationship with God, but also enhance the community.
Sure.
This is where we celebrate things like birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, promotions, just milestones in life. Richard Foster goes on to talk about how celebration encourages us to focus on the positive aspects of life.
I like that.
And that's where he kind of relates it to Philippians 4:8.
Yep.
And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing, fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable, and think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. So then, essentially what he's saying with celebration is what those things are, what true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, admirable things in our life, how are we celebrating those things?
Yeah.
And that's what helps keep those things in focus. As a church, we recently celebrated in the form of a baptism, which is just about celebrating a couple of individuals' choice to follow Jesus.
And we actually did it at a lake, which was kind of fun. And we had a big picnic lunch together. So we did the community and fellowship part that just came together as a very joyful time to celebrate people who were being baptized.
And that is kind of just as simple as that. That's a celebration. We as a community, obviously, we meet on some Sunday mornings, but also one Sunday a month, we get together for a potluck. And that's just, in that moment, it's just, we just talk with one another around tables and we play games.
Yep.
And that's it. That's a celebration. Sometimes the things we celebrate can be really ordinary. Planning a date.
Yep.
Celebrating a relationship. Going for coffee. Celebrating a friendship. Going to a movie. Also can be celebration. It doesn't have to be big events. It's just almost more the idea of intentionality.
And I think that's somehow in our minds we have bigger is better lots of times. And so we're thinking about the big things when really we'd probably be better to not necessarily neglect big things, but to celebrate the small things as they come along.
Yeah. And they can be like little projects around the house.
Yep.
Like, you can celebrate that. Creative endeavors that you're doing, just celebrate that little thing. And it just, hey, I did that. I know for me, I've been trying to write songs, and I've successfully wrote a lot of bad songs. But I started celebrating that I completed something, even though I look back and like, that's really terrible. I celebrated the fact that I did that. I finished something, and just, it was like a little pat on the back.
Yeah.
Cool. And that encouraged me to, keep going, because eventually, hopefully, something good will come out.
Yeah, and I'm notorious for that too. I tend to start lots of things that I don't always finish. So I've this summer in particular, I've gone around and tried to revisit some old projects that I never quite finished and tried to get them completed. And I like to build things, and so I did manage to finish a few projects that were older that I never finished. And then one week I was just feeling like I need to start something new, but it has to be something small I can finish in a day or two. And I was able to do that. And I felt really good about the idea that, I just started something and I finished it all in the same week. And that I really understand how important sometimes celebrating those things are.
Yeah. We can celebrate spiritual practice. I mean, we recently just talked about taking 5 minutes in your day to pray and meditate, silence. If you did that, celebrate that.
Yep.
Great.
Celebrate 5 minutes. Yeah, that's great.
With that, Sunday morning, one of the reasons you get together as a church, as a community on a Sunday morning, is just to celebrate Jesus, who he is, what he's done, what he's doing. Celebration helps keep the good things in view. It's a form of gratitude. It can enhance joy, which can actually aid in us not being consumed by the difficulties and problems we face.
And I think another aspect of that, John Eldridge says, he has an app called the Pause app, and he really focuses on gratitude and joy in those sort of meditations. And in addition to not being consumed by the difficulties, it also helps us see the good in the world, and it helps us feel more connected to God.
Yeah. And it's good to add those things in life, but it's really important. I think this is a note that I think is really important, because I feel sometimes, maybe intentionally, sometimes I think often not intentionally, celebration is not about denying the real difficulties in life or the real deep emotions that are going on. It's really more about helping us, again, not be overwhelmed by them, maybe even giving us a little pause in the midst of the turmoil, and offering a sense of hope, even if things just seem a little dark at the moment. It just, again, it's really about not being overwhelmed by those things, not somehow denying the reality of them.
Sure. And like you said, it's about, a lot of times it's about regulating your emotions and not preventing you from going down to the pit of despair or just deciding to grind through it and just grinding yourself down.
Yeah.
So just to sort of wrap up what we've been talking about today, there's been a few things in this practice, and I think one we would just reiterate is to embrace connection. Fellowship is more than just about gathering. It's about really connecting with other people and recognizing the shared journey we're on as followers of Jesus. And again, it's so important, especially in relationships, all relationships, including the one with your church community and with Jesus, is to practice being present. Let's commit to truly being present with each other and supporting each other through the struggles and the joys alike. And lastly, just to celebrate together, let's make a habit of celebrating both the big and small moments in life and just fostering that environment of gratitude and joy. And as always, if the idea of a celebration is overwhelming, that's okay. Sometimes we just have to let the community be present for you. So hopefully that can be the start of our slow journey. Like we said, I like that metaphor of walking slowly into the lake. So sometimes that is the best way to do it, is to take baby steps and work towards something. And you'll see, as you take the baby steps, you'll see the benefit of what it does for you. And then as your relationship grows with others and with Jesus, you can take another step. So hopefully you've found this podcast helpful today. Please like and subscribe. We like bringing this content for you, and we'll see you next time.